Good morning. Good morning. So this morning we have a double Torah portion, Chukat and Balak, and also this coming Shabbos is the 12th day of Tammuz. Tammuz is the Hebrew month called Tammuz. Next Thursday is a fast day, Shavasa Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were surrounded, which led to Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple. So it's a fast day because it is the day that, again, the enemies of the Jews surrounded Israel, surrounded Jerusalem, and they breached the wall on Tisha B'Av and destroyed the first and second base of Mikdash on Tisha B'Av. As we discussed 2 weeks ago with the portion of the spies, they came back and told the negative news about Israel on Tisha B'Av. So God said to them, good morning.
Good
Oh,
morning.
you're crying because you don't think you can go into the land. I'm going to give you something to cry for in the future years. And Tisha B'Av has been a universal day of mourning for the Jewish people. But when Mashiach comes, it's going to be a universal day, a holiday for the Jewish people. So there was this very well-known chassid of the Rebbe and the previous Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Mendel Futterfass. And he had a successful business and a wife and a son in Russia. And they escaped, but he was captured by Stalin and put into the Gulag in Siberia. And most people did not survive because either you died of disease, of hunger, of freezing, starvation. He survived and he came to America. Why was he put into prison? Because he helped hundreds of Jews escape with forged Polish passports. There was a time where Stalin let people leave if they were Polish for some reason. So he's sitting in prison. Now, he was a man that he told everyone later that whenever he met somebody, he said to himself, what can I learn in my service to God from this person? For example, he met a circus performer who was a tightrope walker. So he says to the tightrope walker, how come you don't fall? So he said, because I never leave my eyes from my end point. The minute I lose sight of my end point, I fall. And he says, what's the lesson of serving God? The minute you forget what your end point, what your mission and your purpose is, you fall. You forget why you're in this world. So he had all these very interesting stories. So he was sitting in one night and he heard the prisoners lamenting their fate. Now, the prisoners were not necessarily thugs, murderers, killers, thieves. There were a lot of them, but there was a lot of intelligentsia, authors, philosophers, generals, people who Stalin felt they were a threat to his leadership, his kingship, whatever you want to call it, his reign of terror. So a general was saying, before I was a prisoner, I was a lauded general. Everyone saluted me. I had entree to everything. And now look who I am. Nobody. I'm a prisoner. Another guy says, I was a famous author. Everyone invited me to their receptions and their parties. They wanted me there. I was prestigious. I was famous. And now look at me. And they're all telling their story, who they were. They look at Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, the Jew, and they go, most probably you're a loser. And you always were a loser because you didn't say anything. He says, quite the contrary. But I have to disagree with you because my vocation has never changed. Now, before I was put into prison, I used to have a very successful business, he said. And I have a wife and I have a son. But my vocation has not changed. So I still feel successful. They said, what are you talking about? He said, my main vocation was always to serve God to the best of my ability. So maybe when I wasn't in prison, I served God through being a successful businessman. But the same way I served God when I was out of prison is the same way I served God in prison. My mission, my purpose, my real vocation, my real job has never changed. I'm still serving God to the best of my ability. So it's all about the mindset. It's all about how you view your life. That's why when Viktor Frankl, the famous Viktor Frankl who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he said, if you have a why, you have a how. If you have a reason for living, you can live, you can survive. He survived the concentration camps. And the same thing with Edith Eger. Remember her? She wrote the book The Choice. She was a famous therapist. And she tells her story that she was a almost world-renowned dancer. She was making waves in where she lived. I think she lived, I'm not sure where she lived, maybe Hungary, I'm not sure exactly. And she and her parents and her two sisters were put on the cattle car to go to Auschwitz. When they came to Auschwitz, she tells the story in her book, her parents were sent to the crematorium immediately. And she and her two sisters were thrown into a barrack with hundreds of others. And the beds, if you can call them beds, the boards meant for one person, two person, 4 or 5 girls were on these boards, these beds. And Mengele, the famous murderer, Yimach Shemai, came into the barracks and said, I heard there's a famous dancer in this barrack. Who is she? So she came forward. She said, it's me. I want you to come with me. You're going to dance for me, he says to her. So she says to herself, dance? My parents were just killed. I haven't eaten in 4 days. There was no food on the cattle cars. How am I dancing? But before her mother was taken away, she said to her daughter, Edith, remember, whatever is in your mind, whatever you make up in your mind, no one can take away from you. Remember this. So she remembered what her mother had just told her. So when she went with him, she envisioned herself that she was in a giant dance performance. And there were thousands of people watching her. And she was happy and she was healthy. And she said, I danced like I never danced. And at the end, he gave her a giant loaf of bread. And she took it back to the barracks. And she looked at her bunkmates and she said, you know what, I'm going to share with them. And she shared the bread with them. And then she says one more beautiful story. In 1944, they were taken on the death march. And she said that she hadn't eaten, she had no energy, and she just was going to lie down. And you know what happened? If you stopped marching, they shot you. She said she put herself down, and as she was sitting herself down, the 4 girls who she had shared her bread with lifted her up, and they literally carried her till eventually they were freed of the Nazi soldiers, because, you know, then they were freed on the end of the death march. And she said that I became a famous therapist, and, you know, she became a student of Viktor Frankl. And she said, at the end of every session, I would kick my foot in the air. Why? To show my resilience. I fought back. Whatever's in your mind can never be taken away from you. And in a minute, you'll see why I'm sharing these stories of whatever is in your mind can never be taken away from you. That in this week's Torah portion, we hear the story of Balak. Who was Balak? Anybody know? King Balak.
No.
King Balak was the king of the Moabites. Now, I'm sure all of you have a little bit of remembering how we discussed who the Moabites were. Remember, who comes from the Moabite? Who was a Moabite princess that converted?
Oh,
Ruth, the book of Ruth that we read on Shabbos. And how Boaz didn't know if he could marry her because it was a law enacted by God that you cannot marry a Moabite. Why? Because when the Jews left Egypt and Balak was the Moabite king, and they came to the Moabite land, the Moabites refused to sell them food or water or supplies. They were cruel people. The men, but the women secretly gave the Jewish people supplies, the Moabite women. So God said, such cruel people. We came in peace. You could never marry a convert from Moab. So they were a very terrible, cruel people. But Ruth was a woman. So Boaz was allowed to marry her if she converted because she was from the women of the Moabites. And if you go back in time, who was Moab? Me'avi, from my father, Lod's daughter, who had an incestuous relationship for one night with her father because she thought the world was destroyed. She's lauded for getting pregnant and giving birth to a son she called Moab, from my father. And Mashiach is coming from this lineage, which we discussed many times based on Kabbalah, why the tainted, seemingly tainted lineage of the King Mashiach, King David, and so on, come from Ruth, from Boaz, from Lot, and who had intimacy with his daughter when he was drunk. She instigated it, and so on. So this is who the Moabites are. Now, in this Torah portion, Balak calls Bilam. Bilam was the world-renowned non-Jewish prophet. We know that God gave non-Jews the ability to prophesy as well, because equality. No one should say only the Jews have power, only the Jews have prophets. God gave power to the non-Jewish nations as well. And there's free choice. Are you going to use your prophecy for the good? You're going to use your power for the bad, for the negative. I'm giving you the pretext to the storyline. So now, Balak calls Bilam. The Jews have traveled 40 years in the desert, giving you the context of what's happening. And Balak, the king, sends messengers to Bilam and says, I need your services, Mr. Prophet. I need your services to curse the Jewish people. Trouble is brewing. They're going to enter the land. Once they enter the land, it's all over. They'll become a force of nature. We need to get rid of them. You know you can't get rid of them regular. You can't wage a war. God protects them, but you're a prophet. Through cursing, using your power of prophecy, your holy power, that will be a way to get rid of the Jewish people. He's a foolish king. He didn't realize it's not so simple. We're going to go through the story soon. But what ends up happening is a whole story, and Bilam, the prophet, comes. And what happens when he tries to use words, curse words? God replaces them with blessings. So you can imagine Balak is humiliated. My prophet is blessing the Jewish people. And two famous blessings that I want to share with you and analyze what are these blessings. So the first one, it's a beautiful blessing. Matovu aholecha Yaakov, mishkanaisecha Yisrael. You ever heard that? Matovu aholecha. We say it in the daily prayers.
Right.
How good
Beautiful
are
your
the how good are the tents of Jacob, which means the children of Jacob, and Matov Halecha Yaakov Mishkanaisecha Yisroel, the dwelling place of Yisroel, the Israelites. Remember, Jacob, our forefather, had two names. He was first called Jacob the heel, because he held on to the heel of his brother Esau. And then later, when he wrestled with the host angel of Esau and he prevailed, God changed his name to Yisrael. You are now a host, a leader of Israel. A leader of Israel. So Yaakov it refers to like the heel, which is kind of like the lower part, and Israel, the Jewish nation, you're now Sar Yisrael, you're a host of God, you're a leader of God, you're a representative of God, and so on. So what is he saying here? We're going to go back to that in a minute. The next thing he says in the blessing, he says many more, but one more beautiful poetic line, which is very complicated. Karai shachav ka'aryeh uchelavi mi kimanu. He crouches, the Jewish people, and lies down like a lion. In other words, he's saying, who are the Jewish people? They crouch and they lie like a lion, and who would dare rouse him? Those who are blessed, who bless you are blessed, and those who curse you are cursed. In other words, if you bless the Jewish people, you'll be blessed. But if you curse the Jewish people, you will be cursed. And of course, the king becomes enraged. I told you to curse them. You blessed them. What's wrong with you? So he says, what could I do? God puts the words in my mouth. I can't remove them. I'm a prophet of God. You can't blame me. I'm like a puppet. Whatever God tells me to say, I say. That's the prophecy. So what does it mean that the Jews crouch like a lion? And who dares rouse these lions? So the Talmud discusses something very interesting. That what happens when you have an animal and your animal creates damage? It gores someone else's animal. It destroys a fence. It chews up your vegetable garden of your neighbor. And it discusses the different domesticated animals that might do this. It could be a ram. It could be a sheep. It could be a more domesticated animal, a bull. It wasn't uncommon for, let's say, a bull to go over and gore up someone else's animal or break through your fencing, so you have to pay damages. But the Talmud says, what about a lion? And that the answer is not a lion. Why? A lion cannot be domesticated. Experiments have showed you can keep a lion in a cage, but you never know when that lion is going to get up. Woe to the one who rouses that lion. It's not an animal that can be domesticated. Therefore, the laws of damages do not discuss a lion. No lion is going to be in your garden on a chain and you're going to be petting your little baby lion. Unless it's Lion King, maybe. So we know that the lion is an animal that represents a species, cannot be controlled, cannot be domesticated. Woe to the one who tries to rouse the lion. Now, who's the lion in the metaphor?
Jewish people.
Israel.
Jewish people. So what is Bilam saying in his blessings? He's saying to his king, but he's saying to everyone, do not think that you can put a Jew in a concentration camp. You could put a Jew in prison. You can try to attack Israel. You will never domesticate the Jewish people. No one owns the Jewish nation.
Amen.
Even when we crouch and we seem like we're down and out, we're lying, we're resting, we're relaxing. Woe to the one who tries to imprison, domesticate, or come after the lion. We cannot be owned. We cannot be controlled. And that's what Mendel Futterfass was saying in jail. It doesn't matter. Then I was a businessman. My vocation hasn't changed. I served God to the best of my ability. Being Jewish is my main vocation, my core. And that's what Edith Egger's mother is telling her. Remember, no one can tell you who you are. No one can control your mind. And that's what Viktor Frankl said. So this beautiful poetic lines from Bilam, from a non-Jewish prophet, really underscore who the Jew is, who we are. And that's why the Torah portion is called Balak. Why call a Torah portion after a cruel king who's trying to curse? Because you see the transformation. He tries to curse, end up the most beautiful blessings come out. It shows us the power of transformation, even when it comes from a negative source. So when these words were spoken, and they're in the Torah, the sages said, let's put it in the morning prayers. It's so beautiful. So Matovu, the part about the dwelling, which we're going to get to in a minute, that the Jews dwell in their tents and they dwell in their dwelling places, got into the morning prayers, but not the part with the lion, because it was declared that the prayers would be way too long, way too complicated. But why did they want it in the prayers? Because in the Shema, because what does it say in the Shema? B'shach b'cha, when you lie down, you serve God. Uf kumecha, when you stand up, you serve God. Doesn't matter. When you're down and out, you serve God. And when you're up and rising star, you serve God. So in the pshat, in the simple explanation means I serve God when I'm lying down, when I'm resting, and I serve God when I wake up in the morning. But I serve God when I'm down and out, if you want to dig in deeper. And I serve God when I'm a rising star, when I'm successful. And that's what Mendel Futterfas says. My vocation didn't change now because I'm in prison. I'm still who I am, but I'm in a different location. God wanted me to serve him in this location. And maybe you have the opportunity to serve God in a different location. You know, they tell the story of two famous brothers, Hasidim, Zusha. I forgot his brother's name, will come to me in a minute. And they were put into prison because they were rabbis teaching Torah. So they're in the prison with who knows how many other thugs and killers and murderers. And it's time to say the morning prayer. Even though you're in prison, you have to daven, right? But they know that in the corner there's a latrine where everyone is using as a facility, as a lavatory.
Latrine.
Latrine, thank you. You're not allowed to daven. You're not allowed to pray to God in a lavatory where there's something where there's unholy matter, so to speak. People use as a bathroom. So Zusha's brother starts crying. Why are you crying? He says, because I can't daven. You're not allowed to daven. How am I going to daven? His brother says, you have it all wrong. If God wanted you to daven, he wouldn't have put you in the prison with a latrine. Latrine. Yeah? God would have put you in a nicer location, which means now your avodah, your mission is not to daven. The same God who tells you, wake up in the morning and daven to me, is the same God who made the rules that if you're in an unholy place, like a bathroom, you're not allowed to daven. He says, you know what? Right. So he begins to dance. He puts his hand on his brother's shoulder. He says, I learned a new thing today. And he begins to dance with his brother in prison. Now the guards hear a commotion. They hear two Jews are dancing in prison. So they come and they go to the other prisoners. What's going on with these guys? Are they having a nervous breakdown? What's happening? They said, we don't know what's happening, but we know it has something to do with that bucket in the corner. That bucket, they're celebrating some kind of thing with that bucket. So the guard said, yeah, they're celebrating that bucket. I'm going to show them. He goes in and he takes it out and he puts it away. And now they were able to daven. So the same God who puts you and says daven in the morning, but if you're in a situation where according to code of Jewish law, you're not allowed to daven, you don't daven. So
That
your
didn't
vacation,
really
what, pardon?
That didn't really happen.
It's a true story. It's documented in Sefer Hasidim. There's a book of stories, and it's in this book of stories.
That is funny.
It's like, yeah, it's a funny story. It's a little bit of a ridiculous story in a way, but look how God watches out. Like little things happen. You wonder, like, how did that happen? This is how it happened, you know? So that's that. So there you go. You have a lion that's crouching in your house, Margaret.
It's
So
actually so exciting to understand then all these meanings that you derive to. Like, wow. And
I
it's
know.
unfolding even more and more, and it's telling us what's going to be and how we are and almost what's happening.
I know it's interesting. I gave a talk a little while ago. I gave a lecture how the Rebbe's 4 ways the Rebbe changed our attitudes in life. 4 ways. And I showed 4 ways. And one of the way, I'll give you a snippet, was called Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence. That the Rebbe taught us that every single thing that happens in your life, no matter how mundane, how silly, is divine providence. That, and it changes the paradigm of how you look at everything that happens to you, right? You tell your child, buy me sour cream. They bring home cottage cheese. Hashgacha pratis, divine providence. It translates and you're like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. It's not so ridiculous if your whole way you look now with a different pair of glasses, you have the right prescription, so to speak, you begin seeing the world in a whole different light, that everything is divine providence. There's nothing that isn't divine providence. And it's interesting, it says that anger is like worshiping idolatry. Why? How is anger like worshiping idolatry? If I get angry at my husband, I get angry at somebody, or I get angry, that's idolatry. Yes. Because what is anger? Why didn't you pick up my cleaners? I asked you 20 times to pick up my cleaners. You couldn't clean off the table? Every day I clean off the table. Right? But what you're trying, what's actually is what you're saying is, I don't believe in divine providence because I'm angry that this happened like this. But wasn't it meant to happen like that? You're just blaming someone that they bought the wrong thing, they didn't empty the garbage, they forgot to pick you up, they didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. But really, if you take a step back, you realize, it was meant to happen this way. I'm using silly examples, but it was meant to happen this way. So anger means you're directing your anger on a person or a thing and not saying, oh God, really, was I meant to take the wrong turn? Or does my husband never know how to take directions? So that's why the Torah says anger is like worshiping idolatry. You're not acknowledging the source of the happening. You're just reacting to what happened, but not thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe it was meant to be this way. Right? Like the guy
What
who
if you have anger, sometimes you wake up and you just have that irritability, or you feel angry about things or circumstances that could sometimes fuel motivation or just kind of give you another perspective if you can oversee it. But anger is real.
Yeah, I know. I can relate to it. I sometimes wake up in the morning, I'm like, why am I angry? Why am I angry? I have to sit down and analyze, why am I angry? And am I directing my emotion in a negative way instead of in a positive way? So you do have to analyze. By the way, feelings is like when you stub your toe. Why does it hurt? So that you should be aware that there needs care. It needs attention.
Mm-hmm.
People who have no sensation and they step on a nail and they get an infection, I'm like, didn't you feel that you stepped on a nail? No. So when you have pain or anger in the morning or any time, don't ignore it. Don't say, doesn't make. No, analyze what's going on in your life. It's a wake-up call. Emotions are meant there to make us feel so that we address it. We address the pain, we address the anger, we address the anxiety, we address the stress. We address the feeling of helplessness or whatever you encounter. I can
Because
very much relate to it,
those
unfortunately.
are uneasy. Those are uneasy feelings.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like in the psalm, we should be joyous. There should be joy and looking forward to, but we have service and we have issues, and there's so much to contend with that those things can whirl you around, or the big coming of the big moon. I feel that sometimes just around the full moon, everybody is so heightened, myself included. It's like a feeling of everything comes to surface at those times.
Right. And if it does, that's an opportunity for growth and release, right? The whole thing is don't ignore your feelings. They're real. No one should poo-poo-poo you. Oh, you're always angry. Oh, yeah, you're in a bad mood. Confront and try to handle. I remember calling my mother late at night. I'm anxious. I'm stressed. I'm worrying about it. She says, what? I don't know. That's why I'm calling you. So my mother started to go through, is it the kids? Is it your husband? Is it this? Is it you that? And she started to list things because I couldn't figure out why I'm feeling worried. By the end of the half an hour list, I felt better. But I'm saying it's a true story. I said, Ma, help me figure out why I'm worried. It's not letting me go to sleep. I'm worried.
But all those 10 things, my God.
My mother was trying to figure out what would make a person worried.
No, but it's just all the things. It's not that you worry. It's just that all those things can make you be consumed. It consumes us,
Yeah,
especially the family, the children,
yeah,
your loved ones, circumstances. These are things that are real in life.
yeah.
But yet I love it too, because the Jews give us a way. Well, you have to stop that. You can't talk business on Shabbos. You have to go in community and be uplifted by your community and be together and share a meal. It strengthens you to go
Yeah,
on.
yeah. If you realize also that your center is your relationship with your soul and God, it helps you always center yourself. Whenever something goes out of whack, the wheel is spinning off the rotor, you have to get it back. How do you get it back? By reconnecting, doing small things. Sometimes if you redirect yourself, you get back into balance. You know, even like sometimes you go, I'm so upset, let me go take a walk. And you take a walk, you come back into the house, things look better. Things are more manageable. Sometimes a person has to redirect and not unwallow. Sometimes that helps. You know, they say like if you wake up in the morning and you're having, I don't want to get out of bed today, mood, do something for somebody else. It will get you out of bed. Call someone who needs a pick me up. Do something for somebody else, and that will redirect your energy. I always tell the story. You know what? I remember it was I was having that like the book, a terrible, not good day, whatever it's called, the worst day. There's a children's book, and I had a meeting to top it off. My car had no gas. So did I tell you the story too many times?
We heard it yet with the
Yeah. And then so I gave this woman Teddy a lift back to her apartment. I was already late. And then when I got back in the car, my day changed. So sometimes when you redirect yourself, whether by choice or by accident, everything realigns itself. Sometimes you just need a realignment. I'm not saying that solves every deep problem, you know, and your bank account has zero. When you come home, it's still going to have zero. But now maybe you have more energy, more focus, more faith in Hashem, where you're able to tackle the problems, the tasks, and the darkness that envelops you. The problem doesn't go away. You can't hide it under the bed, but you're now stronger to deal with it because it's your mindset. So maybe that's the trick to the trade, the mindset, you know? And know that what it says, that the Jews crouch like a lion, and woe to the one who dares rouse him. And I feel so much it applies now with Israel. Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon is killing Israeli soldiers every day and shooting missiles, and we should just go back to sleep. You have to take a perspective. Don't think you're going to wipe us out. We'll not allow it. You don't own us. We are like a lion, the Jewish nation. We didn't start the war, but we will defend ourselves to the bitter end, or to the happy end, I'd like to say.
The joyous end.
The joyous coming of Mashiach. But I'm very proud of our prime minister that he's able to say, listen, we thank America, but we're now going to wean ourselves away from American need to depend on another country. And he will. I know he will. And because at the end of the day, as supportive as our president is, he has to worry about the United States of America, his number one responsibility. And he's not Jewish, and he's not God, and he's not the Messiah. So he's an ally, and we have to remember he's an ally, and tell people he's an ally and support him. But at the end of the day, God runs the world. God,
and he served us very well.
And he continues to. He continues to.
Thank God. And
I don't, right, thank God. I don't think that I think we have a very strong ally. The Iran deal basically is falling apart anyway. They don't know how to make peace. They don't want peace. They want to kill us. Death to America. So I don't know how we could make peace with a monster. But anyway, politics aside, this is my own opinion, everybody. It doesn't say it in the Torah portion. But what it does say in the Torah portion, that the Jews are owned by God, for each other. You cannot curse us. You cannot own us. So now let's go, and very much ties in that on Shabbos is the day that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was freed from terrible prison. He was there for 18 days, and they treated him, abused him. It was horrible. And he was freed by a miracle. And then they said, okay, we're going to suspend the death sentence. We're going to send you to the Gulag. But even that was suspended, and he was allowed to return home. And the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe made his way to America and was later reunited with his daughter, Chayimushka, and his son-in-law, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. And in 1955, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away, and the Rebbe, his son-in-law, took over the leadership a year later. Or 1950, I have to look it up, I think.
How old was he when he took over? Do you remember?
50 something maybe, or 40. I have to look it up. Now, the story, you know that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, who was freed from prison this Shabbos, so it became a Hasidic holiday. We celebrate the Day of Liberation. His father, Rabbi Shalom Ber, was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he's the son of a Rebbe. So in Russia, they were always battling the hate of the Tsar. So there was a decree for the Jewish people, and through political channels and negotiation, they were able to, at that moment, get rid of one of the decrees from the Tsar. So the Rebbe Rashab tells his son, we have to say l'chaim. We have to celebrate that. We averted a disaster. So it was late at night, so the Freida Rebbe went to buy a bottle of vodka. Couldn't find. So he goes into Gorky Park, and there's a drunkard drinking, and he has one unopened bottle. So the Freida Rebbe says to him in Russian, can I buy this bottle? Now the bottle, let's say, sold for 1 ruble. He says, I'll give you 5 rubles. The drunk looks at him, he says, no, it's my liquor, it's my vodka. He says, I'll give you 10 rubles. He says, no.
Invite him over.
So the Freida Rebbe says, so how much do you want for your vodka? I need it. He says, nothing. He says, why? He says, because when I have this bottle of vodka, I own Moscow. I feel like I own the whole Moscow. So he couldn't get the liquor, the vodka, so he goes back to his father, the Rebbe, and he tells his father what happened. His father says, from everything you can learn a lesson. What's the lesson here? Who knows what's the lesson? With 1 bottle of vodka, I own the whole Moscow. right? So the Rebbe Rashab says, with one Torah and one mitzvahs, we own the whole world. We own our lives. He says, if this guy thinks he owns the whole Moscow with one bottle of vodka, how much more the Jew? We own our lives by the Torah and the mitzvahs that we do. You can always learn a lesson, he said, even from the shikr, from the alcoholic, from the drunk. So the Freida Rebbe later wrote down the story that his father taught him as the Rebbe. His father was the Rebbe. So when the Freida Rebbe came to America, forgot what year, me with the dates, everything I have to look up. He got off the ship. They had like a private, a big ship that had like a little private boat that brought him to the shore. And all the Jews who were in America already, settled in New York, came to welcome this great Rebbe. So right there, the Rebbe was very, very ill at the time. By the time he was freed from prison and came to America, he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't speak clearly. He was a lot of ailments. So the Rebbe stood on the dock and he gave over Farbrengen, like he gave over a Torah discourse to all the welcoming Jews. And he said that in America is nicht anders. The famous line, America is no different. What did he mean? That you think you're coming to America, you could throw your tefillin overboard. You can give up your shtetl life, so to speak. Because we're in America now. We're emancipated. We're liberated. We don't have to worry about the Tsar and the Stalins and the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. We're free. But yeah, America is not different when it comes to serving God. Serving God doesn't matter if you're in the shtetl, in a mansion on Park Avenue. We serve God in the same way. And the Rebbe, that's what the Rebbe spoke, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. So when he went back to his hotel that night, a few of his closest disciples came and knocked on the door, and they said, Rebbe, we need to speak to you. We want you to know, we don't want to hurt your feelings, Rebbe, but America is different. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do here in America. It's just not going to work. American Jews are different. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in his diary that he cried bitter tears that night because he said, my closest confidants tore me down in a sense. They said, you can't do it. You'll never do it. America is different. You say America is nicht anders. So it hurt the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe so much that his closest friends did not have confidence in his vision of bringing Judaism to the American Jews, many who were battered from the Holocaust. Remember that the Rebbe, after his father-in-law passed away, inherited a generation of Holocaust Jews who were demoralized, demolished, who were broken. And the Rebbe built up Jewry. But first, the Frierdiker Rebbe started that. And we see what they accomplished. Starting with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, gave it over to this Rebbe. So he didn't listen to his confidants. America is nicht anders, he said. America is not different. When it comes to serving God, doesn't matter you're in a prison, you're in the gulag, you're living in a beautiful home in Westport, or Wilton, or Weston, or Norwalk. Serving God is wherever you are, wherever you go, under all circumstances. And the Rebbe, till the day the Rebbe passed away, our Rebbe, the present, the Rebbe always spoke, my father-in-law, the Rebbe. He never said, I, the Rebbe. He used to say, my father-in-law, the Rebbe says. And when you gave the Rebbe a note, right? I wrote to the Rebbe a note once and many times. The Rebbe wrote me back, you know what? Here's a blessing. I'm going to remind you at the resting place of my father-in-law. The Rebbe used to take all our letters and bring it with him to the resting place of his father-in-law, which you saw near the two stones, right? One is the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and one is the Rebbe. So the Rebbe himself would pray at the resting place of his father-in-law.
Where were his parents?
Russia. Now, the Rebbe's mother, Chana, we went to her gravestone, remember? She's an extraordinary woman. She's a tzaddikus, a righteous woman. And his father was called Reb Levi Yitzchak, and was also a tzaddik. Because look, his parents gave birth to him. You can imagine who the parents are. But his father was a disciple of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's. His father could have been a Rebbe, and his father did have a following. But he always considered himself a chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, the Rebbe's father. Just letting you know context. The Rebbe's father did not look to be the Rebbe of Lubavitch. The Rebbe's of Lubavitch, it was a lineage, passed down. But remember, those you don't earn it. I mean, you earn it, but you're born a Rebbe, you're not born a Rebbe.
And the Lubavitch movement was in Russia, and is there a certain learning, and is that what the Rebbe transcribed, or was the Rebbe's teaching also modernized to fit the new Jews and the new America way?
So it all started with the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name. The Baal Shem Tov revealed to the world the Hasidus, Jewish mysticism. It was a time of tremendous depression of the Jews in Europe and in Russia. The Jews were being lost to assimilation. Why? They didn't have the knowledge. They were poor. So either you were a scholar or you were a poor Jew. There was nothing to bridge the gap, so to speak. So the Baal Shem Tov, who dressed like a plain peasant, revealed to the simple Jew the deepest secrets of the Torah, the Kabbalah, mysticism. Why do we need mysticism? Because mysticism is what you and I talk about right now, the analysis of the lion that crouches, all based on mysticism. How can you take the Torah and the deepest part of Torah, an understanding of God who's not understandable? How can you show a person who's not a scholar how Judaism is for everybody? That it's not just for those who sit in the synagogue praying and davening and learning all day. How it's for you and me when we go on the stock market, when we're in the supermarket, when we're doing laundry, when we're traveling, when we're raising our children and grandchildren. How does this relate to me? No, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a Rebbe. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a rebbitzin. It's not for me. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov started a revolution, how Torah is for every person wherever they are. And then the Maggid of Mezrich built on that. Then the Chabad dynasty began with the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who was a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Maggid, he took the knowledge and he wrote the Tanya, which is the primer on Kabbalah, one of the deepest books, and started the Chabad Lubavitch movement of the 7 Rebbes. He was the first of the 7. And from him branched out other Hasidim. But in my opinion, the most powerful form of Jewish mysticism is the Chabad. What's Chabad? Chachma, intellect, Bina, understanding, Deya, knowledge. That mysticism, Kabbalah, Torah is brought into, first it's a spark, Chachma, Bina, then you understand from that spark. And then Deya, how does this apply the knowledge to your daily life? That's what Chabad mysticism is. It's based on the intellect.
And when did the Baal Shem Tov live?
I'm going to look
It
it
was
up
in
right
Russia.
now. Hold on.
Okay.
Hi,
I've
Siri.
read of
When did the Baal Shem Tov live? Everything is Siri now. Let's see.
That saved the Jewish religion and the Jewish people.
Okay, give me a second. Let me do it on
I wish I could remember the books I read about Baal Shem Tov. Fantastic. Maybe it was
Baal Shem Tov. Remember, he was called the master of the good name, right? And he clothed himself like a simple Jew. Why? Because if he would clothe himself like a Rebbe with a fur hat, August 1698, born, died in 1760.
Long life.
So in the 1600s, that's when the Baal Shem Tov saw. Now remember I discussed with you that the Alter Rebbe was put into prison? I actually visited the prison. We took my mother to Russia. Why was he put into prison? He was put into prison because the Russian government said he's a revolutionary. He's sending money to Israel. He's looking to usurp the government. But what was the real reason God let him go into prison? Spiritual prison. Also, because there was a debate in the heavens. Are we going to let Rabbi Shneir Zalman give out the book of Tanya, the secrets of the Torah, to regular people? There was a debate in the heavens. So on that day, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, their souls came to prison. And the Alter Rebbe said to them, you have to understand this from a mystical viewpoint. No one's visiting me in prison, chas v'shalom, if I should never be in prison. No one's visiting me at my dining room table, but the Alter Rebbe was the Alter Rebbe. And he said, should I stop? Should I not give out the Tanya? If the heavenly decree says I should and I won't, they go, absolutely not. Give it out. Don't listen to anybody. They came down to support their student. So then when the Alter Rebbe was released, the Alter Rebbe gave out the Tanya, the book, the Kabbalah primer, which is not such a primer. So there was a heavenly decree. How could you let him give out this book to the people? Look at the people. They're sinners. They desecrate Shabbos. They don't want to study. How can you let the Alter Rebbe teach these Jews the secrets of the Torah? But what's the answer? That's precisely why he should be teaching them the Torah. But there were those who are the deflectors, the troublemakers up in the heavens. No. Like the angel said to God, why are you going to give the Torah to the people, to the Jews? They're going to deny you. They're going to complain against you. They're going to desecrate your mitzvahs. Why are you giving it? Give it to us. You know it's solid. Angels are only do good. We're the ones to get the Torah. So God says to Moses, would you please answer the angels? Can you please be the defense attorney? So Moses says to the angels, oh, do you eat food every day? They go, no. So he says, how could you have the Torah? It talks about eating, brachas, blessings, don't mix milk and meat, elevating food for godliness. What are you going to do with the Torah? He says, okay, guys, how are you going to keep Shabbos? You're going to keep Shabbos? You're going to light Shabbos candles? You're going to bake challah? You're going to go to shul? You're going to eat a Shabbos meal? So one by one, Moshe showed them the Torah is not for angels, it's for human beings. The same idea. And so the Freida Rebbe, who was the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and then our Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe, they brought it to America. They really revolutionized American Jews who were already throwing off the tefillin over the Jews tell stories how they were coming to Ellis Island and they took their Jewish books and the tefillin, they throw it over into the Bay River. Because they said, America is America. We're not going to be Jews in America anymore. We're gone. We're done with Judaism. That was for the shtetl. But now we don't need Judaism. When the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe came and they revitalized American Jewry to what we have today.
Right. Divine intervention.
Yeah. The secret is, my father-in-law was asked to speak for the B'nai B'rith organization years ago in the 1940s or 1950s. He was a disciple of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was a yeshiva student, and then, of course, our Rebbe. So the topic was, can Hasidism, Jewish mysticism, survive in America today? That was his topic. So he gets up to speak. He was an orator. He was something extraordinary. He said, with all due respect, as I begin my talk, may I change my title? And I'm changing it to not, can Hasidism survive in America today? Can American Jewry survive today without Hasidism, without Kabbalah, without Jewish mysticism? That's the question. Can Jews survive without the Tanya? And the answer we know, no. Because it's good to have the esoteric. If you're a philosopher and you like to be like a cloud, a Luftmensch, a cloud person, philosophize from A to Z all day and night. But your children sitting around the table are not necessarily going to enjoy your philosophy. They're going to say, what's in it for me, mama? And to start crying and telling them how Jews were murdered and slaughtered by the Crusaders and the Nazis and the Spanish Inquisition, what are they going to say then? No, thank you. Judaism is not for me. I'm not from the persecuted ones. I'm emancipated. I'm free now. I don't want to hear how we were all died. Kids today want to know what's in it for me, the joy of Judaism. Not that you should not tell them history or teach them history, but that's not the religion. The Holocaust is not our religion. It's our story of our lives. It's important to know it, to remember it. History repeats itself, but not that that's why you should be Jewish because mama and papa were killed in the concentration camps. No. If kids are not given a why to be Jewish, a love and a pride, positive, they're not going to want to be Jewish because it's a new generation now. So we have to give them, that's Chassidus. It takes the esoteric and says, what does it have to do with me? Everything. Why do you wake up in the morning? Why do you want to win the Knicks? Because everything points to one reason. How can I make the world a dwelling place for God? That's the ultimate, if you want to know one question, how do I make this world a dwelling place for God? What is my mission and purpose in this world? Why was I born? Why am I here? Everyone is going to look in the mirror one day and ask themselves that question. Why am I here? What purpose do I serve? Because if you can't answer that question, you don't want to live. Because like one lady spoke to me a few weeks ago, she told me her husband is at the top of the heap. He can't even, there's no position in his company that could be higher. He's the highest. And he drives a gorgeous car and they have a beautiful home. She says, and he wakes up and he asks his wife one day, honey, but what now? What now? He could buy whatever he wants. Whatever he wants, he could buy. He has it. Why not? He can buy an island in Albania like well, maybe not. Maybe you have to be Jared Kushner to buy the island in Albania. So at the end of the day, when you're struggling, that's your thing. I got to pay my bills. I got to pay. But what happens when you're at the top of the mountain? You're going to ask yourself the question, why am I here? What's my purpose? Remember in the movie with Robert Redford, The Candidate? They put up a young candidate to oppose the other candidate, who's an older guy. He's never going to win, but they just need somebody dynamic. And he wins. Why? Because he knows he's not winning, so he says whatever he wants, and people want to hear that. It's refreshing. And now New Yorkers are all like, we want him. And he's on top of the shoulders of the winning, after he wins the election, they're carrying him up. And he whispers to his campaign manager, who said, you don't have to worry about anything, you're never going to win. Just do us a favor, we'll pay you to run. And so he mouths, and that's the end of the movie. What do I do? What do I do now? He says, now that I won. So the Torah portion, I want to end off just with the thing about the tents. So what was the blessing that the Jews, how beautiful, how good is that the Jews dwell in the tents and the Israelites, the Yisrael, dwell in their dwellings. First of all, why the repetition? Isn't a dwelling a tent a dwelling? Isn't Yaakov Israel and Israel Jacob? Why do you need to say it again? So the Torah Chassidus has a beautiful insight that there's two ways of dwelling. You can dwell in a tent, but a tent is temporary. A dwelling place is permanent. It's your home. So he says, Matoivu Yaakov, Ole Yaakov, how good are the tents of Jacob, and how beautiful are the dwellings of Israel. So a Jew has two levels in their life. There's the Jew that's like Israel in the permanent dwelling. You invite God into your house and you live your whole life with God in your house. It's permanent. Your Shabbos and Yontiv, your whole life is run by godliness, Torah, mitzvahs. Your calendar is by the Jewish holidays and Shabbos. And every mitzvah you seek, God is always present in your life. You're pious, you're connected. It's beautiful. Your life is imbued with godliness. It's a permanent situation in your life. But then there's the Jew Yaakov, the heel, the lower part, the Jew, that lives in a tent temporarily. It's Yom Kippur. Oh my gosh, it's Yom Kippur. My mother told me I always have to go to shul on Yom Kippur and fast. So you fast, you go to shul on Yom Kippur, you say, and you invite God in your tent for 24 hours because it's Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur, you go back to your regular life. God plays no role in your regular life. Every few years, every few months, you have an epiphany. Maybe I should be more Jewish. Things are not going so well. Let me give a little charity. Let me order a kosher chicken. Good. That's the Jew that God is not part of their life 24/7. God is a temporary part of their life. One day yes, one day no, 1 week yes, 1 week no. What is the blessing from Bilam? The same Jew who invites God into their house 24/7 and lives a filling life, godly life, a pious life, is equally valued to the Jew that is what we call a once-a-year Jew, a Yom Kippur Jew. God values the Jew, whether it's temporary in your tent, you're bringing God in, and you're not from the highest level of observance and connection, to the Jew that every day he's praying 3 times a day to God, and God is very much part of his life. What Bilam saw, that the Jew who's sometimes estranged from God, disconnected from God, is equally loved and valued even more sometimes than the permanent Jew. That's what he saw by the Jewish nation. So Bilam, starting out that he wanted to curse the Jews, ended up highlighting the strength of the Jew. One, that we're like a lion. No one can own us. We're not a domesticated animal. Beware, if you rouse the lion, you go against the Jew, God is going to come and take care of it. And secondly, or firstly, that the Jew is valued by God, whether they're the pious all day or whether they're the Jew that once in a while wakes up and remembers, I'm a Jew, I better do something for that. I have a soul, I better, bring God into my tent for a little expression. Ma toivu ohala Yaakov mishkanesecha Yisrael. How beautiful are the dwelling place of Israel and the tents of Jacob. So in every one of our little tents, know that whenever you invite God in, very good. Until you make God into a permanent dwelling in your home. So we end off that this coming Shabbos, we have a very special Shabbos. So light Shabbos candles 18 minutes before sunset. Because America and Israel needs blessings. We still have the villains at the gate trying to hurt us. So we need God's blessing more than ever. Next Thursday is a fast day from morning to night. If you can't fast a whole day, fast a little bit, give a little extra tzedakah, and we're going to take a break from the Torah class for a few weeks, and we'll resume. I must probably send out an email, because I'd love to give a class if Mashiach doesn't come before Tisha B'Av. And next Thursday starts the 3-week mourning period, where, people don't make weddings, people don't cut their hair, some people don't listen to live music until Tisha B'Av, and then life resumes.
Or go swimming.
No, you could go swimming and bathe. Only the week preceding Tisha B'Av, the 9 days, which I'll discuss with you when we do a Tisha B'Av class, you don't go swimming or bathe. and do dangerous activities. But if health reasons you need to bathe, you don't do things that could be considered dangerous. That's why swimming, boating, and stuff like that. But that's only the 9 days preceding Tisha B'Av. That's not the 3 weeks. And that week also you don't eat meat or drink wine only on Shabbos because it's days of mourning. But you know what? We're not going to have it this year because Mashiach is coming.
Amen.
So don't worry. Yeah. So we
Amen.
want to end off on a happy note. So enjoy your week, enjoy your Shabbos. Come to shul if you want to. We could daven together. One lady says,
willing.
Freida, I never see you. I'm like, come to shul, you'll see me. Shabbos, I'm
Right.
always in shul. Anyway,
Thank you so much,
thank you
Freida.
for the opportunity. Good Shabbos,
Thank you,
everybody.
Freida.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Be
Thank
well.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Shabbos.
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 Good
Bye, all.
Shabbos. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Freida.
Bye.
Thank you
Take
all.
care.
Thank you.